Good afternoon, Indiana. Welcome to another special presentation of This Week at the Indiana Statehouse with MADVoters here. I am joined by the Director of Advocacy for the fine MADVoters organization, Katie Rector. It is halftime of the Indiana General Assembly. No Bad Bunny, no Green Day, just the two of us here with you to fill you in on where we stand at the midway point of this year's session. Katie, good to see you again.
You too, Scott. Thank you so much for having me on. And yeah, we don't bring fun, exciting halftime show performances, but we have lots of info and updates for you guys.
Yeah, no song and dance number here, no choreography, no big hits, but we will hopefully inform you with the knowledge that you need to participate in the democratic process with the month we have left in this session. Yes. How to contact your senators, how to contact your representatives, to encourage them to pass the good bills and discourage them from passing the bad bills. Let us start by talking a little bit about MADVoters Bill Tracker, where you can follow all of this legislation as it makes its way through. Katie, give us the overview of the MADVoters website for the folks if they're just joining us for the first time.
Absolutely. Welcome, everyone. So we are MADVoters. We're an Indiana nonprofit focused on empowering civic engagement and progressive policies. We do that through educating people, encouraging people to get involved, and helping let them know about the civic, legislative, electoral process. So right now we are really focused on bill tracking 2026. Scott, like you said, we've been at this about a month, give or take, and we have about a month left. So it's an extra short session. And so our bill tracker tool on our website helps explain the process as we move through what is already, a very quick process, even faster. So we've got a spreadsheet form. We also have, which Scott will show, graphics up on the screen, but a more viewer-friendly for like mobile users view of our bills. But you can sort them by author, by category, by our rating. We'll tell you the status of the bill, when the bill's scheduled for action, who to contact, all that good stuff. So it's really just meant to like break things down and make it easier for people to advocate for themselves and the policies that are important to them. And so that is at madvoters.org. And then you can also follow us on socials: Facebook, Instagram, Threads, TikTok. Did I say Instagram? Maybe.
Yeah. Blue Sky. I think I've got all your handles there on the scroll at the bottom of the screen. You'll see those going by over the course of the show.
Thank you.
So, be sure to follow MADVoters and Progressive Indiana Network wherever you engage with social media. So I guess let's just kind of situate ourselves again. Like we said, it's halftime here. I've got the legislative process pulled up on the screen, and I want to say that is step 6, which is more than halfway through this list here, but that puts us at the halfway point of the legislation, because things that have now crossed over or are beginning the crossover process, I guess that officially happens Monday or Tuesday, have to go back through the whole thing. First reading, committee, second reading, committee hearing.
And it's kind of weird because of the snow day. Yeah, well, we had that snow. Well, the House had a snow day, so that's pushed everything a day in the House. So yeah, when you look at it, the Senate is basically, they have moved everything over. The Senate bills that have moved on, they're over in the House now. The House is going to finish up on Monday. So we got some stragglers. So some of the House bills we talk about today, they may be getting like the finishing touches on Monday. But yeah, you're right. It's kind of like we're halfway through. And had we not had the snow day, we would have, it would have been a nice, clean starting on Monday crossover. But because of the snow the other day, we were straggling in the House a little bit.
Yeah, so to continue my football reference, I guess it's not exactly halftime yet. There's zeros on the
Close
clock.
enough.
There is one untimed down for a Hail Mary, I guess.
There you go.
Speaking of Hail Mary, it is going to take some miracles, I think, to defeat some of this bad legislation, some acts of God, and some acts of democracy by
Yeah.
us, pressuring our legislators to defeat some of these bad bills that we will talk about. But not
Yeah.
all bad news this week. There is some good stuff to talk
Mhm.
about. So, Katie, why don't we jump into it and start by looking at House Bill 1001, and
Yep.
and I guess one thing that we want to mention at the top now is,
Mhm.
as we are crossing over these House bills, things that have an HB and are four numbers at the beginning of them. They're now in the Senate. So we're anything that is a House bill originally, we're going to be contacting our senators now, and
Yep.
vice versa.
Yes. Yep. So yeah, House Bill 1001 is one of the big priority bills. It's a big bill we're watching. We're not really taking a for or against stance on it right now. A lot of times you see with these big omnibus bills, they change dramatically over the legislative process. So right now we've got good hopes for this one. The bill is seeking to try and make housing more affordable, increasing housing supply. And of course, there's always a trade off for things. We want to make sure that, we're not, lawmakers aren't reducing regulations to the point where it's unsafe anymore, but we also don't want to take away local control. So it's a bill that we're watching, but I mean the housing affordability continues to be a huge priority for us. So that one has been sent over to the Senate. If you've got strong feelings on it, or things you would like to see this bill include, excuse me, go ahead and contact your senator. If you go to our bill tracker and you put in your address, it'll connect you with your actual senator in your district. It even takes you to their email, and there's a desk number. You can call and leave a voicemail like this weekend, and it'll be with their assistant. So that one's, promising, I think. And we'll just have to see how it shakes out. And then the
Yeah,
next
and
one,
you still don't have a thumbs up or thumbs down rating on this.
yeah,
It is
it's one of
definitely
those.
still a
Yeah,
see how the
it's
amendments play out.
yeah, because I mean, amendments can massively change the bill, and can go from something we support to oppose. So we're watching it. Same with 1002, the electric one we'll talk about next. Um,
Yeah, well, let's do that. And this is
okay.
one of the bills where the amendments can make a big difference. Now, 1002, about relief for Indiana's ridiculous increasing very high
Mhm.
electric utility rates. There were a bunch of amendments offered up on this
Yep.
bill in the
Like over a
House,
dozen. Yeah.
and stuff that Democrats offered up that maybe could have made this bill better, that
Yeah.
maybe have gotten a thumbs up rating from Mad Voters on it.
Oh, I think so.
Summarily
Yeah. I mean,
defeated, weren't they?
no, well, they didn't move. Right. That was the problem. So, I mean, the bill as is, it's wanting to sort of restructure more like high level things. So it's restructuring like how the utilities set their rates. It does have some good provisions in it. A moratorium on shutoffs of electricity during really hot weather. That's a good thing. Um, but like you said, there were some amendments, over a dozen, that were filed, all by Democrats, and those would have provided more immediate relief for affordability. Rather than just like sort of changing like administrative stuff, it would have actually provided relief. And I'll go through those real quick. And you can also see them, like if you go to the Indiana General Assembly website, you can see the copies of the amendments that get filed, even though they don't pass. You can still see what was submitted, and I think it's pretty illuminating. So, like Representative Cherish Pryor, she filed several. One of them would have prohibited disconnections for like medically frail people, people who rely on devices like respirators, ventilators, dialysis. That failed. I mean, we say we're a pro-life state, and we don't vote like
Monstrous,
it.
right?
So that was frustrating. She had another amendment. Utility companies should reimburse customers if there's an outage. That one was voted down. That was rejected. All these that we're going to talk about were rejected. Another one, the IURC, the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission, oversees our big electric utilities here in Indiana. And the long and short of it is these companies basically are allowed to act like monopolies. In exchange, they are under the oversight of the IURC. The governor does get to appoint that. So although it's technically a nonpartisan agency, of course it's going to have the fingerprints of politics all over it because they're all appointed.
Right, and they just got a new chair, didn't they? It was Andy Zay, the former senator, right?
Yeah,
from the,
and he's
Huntington area, a
Mhm.
big recipient of I want to say donations during his time in the Senate from those very
Funny how that
utilities
works,
he's now
isn't
going
it?
to be regulating. Yeah.
Funny. Yeah, so like Representative Pryor had an amendment that would have required the utilities that are under the IURC to get approval before making like buying stock, selling stock, things like that. That was rejected. Representative Mike Andrade had several good amendments. There was one about prohibiting utilities from raising rates more than 3% and also having to hold public hearings before they raise rates, which I think everyone here in Indiana has been impacted by rate increases, but especially our friends down in Southwest Indiana who have some of the highest rates. What was it? It was Centerpoint, and now it's AES, I think. Different.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those monopoly companies. Or maybe it is Center. I don't know. But I mean, I'm sure they would have appreciated the opportunity to have some more public hearings, or putting some of the stair stepping instead of these high rate increases. Rejected. He had an amendment to prohibit the disconnections in cold weather. So like right now, it's freezing out. What happens if your electric gets shut off? I mean, that's really dangerous, just like in the summer. So I mean, although the bill right now does say you can't disconnect in the dead of summer, certain heat, it doesn't say that for winter. So it's a shame his got rejected. A really big one that he spent a lot of time discussing on the floor was his 15th amendment. It would have eliminated the sales tax on utility bills that we pay. So that right there would have been a 7% saving. Yeah. That was rejected. At the same time, this assembly is giving tax breaks to data centers, so it's like, why are they getting tax breaks, tax abatements, and yet, our residential customers, they're not,
Yeah, they can afford these things. These are the largest and oftentimes the most profitable companies on the face of the earth.
Yeah.
And they could afford to pay their taxes, and Hoosiers are struggling to pay their electric bills. 7% would have made a really, really big difference for a lot of people.
Huge. I mean, that has been a huge priority. So yeah, it's just a shame for those to fail. And I think it's important to know, though, as frustrating as it is, it's important to know there are lawmakers that are trying to push these through at the Statehouse. And as frustrating as it is for those to be rejected, I think, people need to be aware that good things could happen. If we can sort of change the makeup and the power structure at the Statehouse to get some of those through. Because right now with a super majority, it tends to lean itself to extremism, and they'll just sort of reject anything with a D by it. Because they're a super majority, they can afford to. They don't have to be bipartisan. They don't have to cooperate with the other side because they don't need to. They've got all the numbers in their favor. So that's one of the consequences, I think, of seeing a supermajority is you have a bill like 1002 that is okay, but could be much, much better and really impact people who need it. And
so I guess let me ask you, Katie. So I mean, I guess the language in these amendments from the House that failed. Yeah. We talk about like last week we talked about zombie language, that can come back, bad stuff that we defeated that can get snuck back in later. Well, these are good things that can be offered up for amendment while the Senate debates this. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you are really passionate about like that 7% reduction on your utility bills, absolutely call your senator and say, I really would have liked to see this amendment passed when it was in the House, but how about you guys look at it now? How about you guys do it? Put that on them. That is absolutely something that they can do. And so, yeah, the fight is not over. It is only halfway there. So I would definitely encourage folks to contact their senator and ask for that.
And that did we get all the amendments covered there, Katie? Did we miss anything?
Yeah, there's a few more. Representative Andrade had a similar one to Representative Pryor with trying to limit those rate increases so they don't go too high. And then he also tried to get through a moratorium on the fixed rates and charges. That also was rejected. So a lot of things that would have just impacted the bills that you and I get were rejected, unfortunately.
Yeah. So now this one, 1001, 1002, MADVoters didn't take a stance on those, or they're kind of wait and see, however, now the next one we're going to talk about, 1343, it has the thumbs down rating from MADVoters. And I'll tell you what, I was at a protest yesterday, an anti-ICE protest here in Bloomington. Really good turnout, by the way, for midday on a weekday in like single digit temperatures. Very encouraging stuff. Now, one of the signs there was Stop House Bill 1343.
Fantastic.
Tell us about this one. This one's kind of scary.
It is scary, and I'm glad that people are aware of it, because the provision of this that we're concerned about was buried in the bill. It's a long bill. A lot of it is outside the scope of what we're focused on at MADVoters. But it's Section 5 that raised the alarm for us and so many other advocacy organizations like us. That section would grant police powers to certain trained units of the National Guard, which ultimately they're under the control of the governor. And so that means, the governor would then have this militarized police, or, police powers of the National Guard, whichever way you want to think of it, under his control. And of course, we're very concerned about this because we look at what's happening in Minneapolis, and other areas where the government is using law enforcement or just a show of force against folks who are trying to exercise their civil liberties. What was really interesting is if you watch the live stream, the lawmakers supporting this bill, the bill author and others, they said that we need to do this because, like, during the Boston Marathon bombing, the National Guard didn't have the training they needed. Well, that was over like a decade ago. Why now? Why bring this bill up now if that's really what's about it? That was just, I think, an excuse.
Yeah, and I understand, Katie, that one of the most concerning things about this is that it gives the governor the ability to send militarized police into communities without the consent of the local governments in those communities.
Absolutely, right. So, I mean, it's just... talk about big government, talk about big government overreach, surveillance, encroachment on civil rights. I mean, it's a bad bill. And it's a pretty blatant attempt, I think, to try and inject fear into people who have the right to protest. For them to say, oh, this is because of the Boston Marathon bombing, like, that's just ridiculous. If you're going to fight for a bill like this, say it with your whole chest. Don't make these excuses. Voters aren't stupid. And we know what this is actually about. So this is one that it's a House bill. It's going to the Senate. Contact your senator about and express your concerns with the bill. Again, it's Section 5 that really has those concerning aspects about the militarization of the police there.
So specifically, when we call our senators, we want to say, that is where our concern lies about 1343. Is maybe we can just work on taking out Section 5.
Yeah. You can read through the whole bill too if you want. If you go to our bill tracker, the full spreadsheet version, you can click on the link, or you can go to the IGA website. You can read the full thing. But yeah, at first when you read it, it doesn't seem like it's that concerning, really. And then you get to that section, and it's like, whoa. That's we don't think that's good.
Yeah. Well, this. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Katie.
Oh no, I just keep circling. It's just bad. It's just bad. And we can kind of
all
continue in
this
that thread with
for
SB
years and
76.
years and years, Katie, my entire adult life, all I can hear is the Republicans talking about government overreach and a tyrannical government and needing to be armed to fight off a tyrannical government. Now you're like, come on, NRA, do it. Do it.
Right. I mean, let's meet the moment, guys. I mean, here's the tyrannical government that we've, heard folks raging about for years and years. And not only are they not doing anything about it, but they're defending them. It's wild. It is an absolutely wild timeline.
Cheering it on. Yes. You were supposed to use those weapons to fight off the tyrannical government, not, fire your weapon into the air in celebration.
Yeah.
So this next one is going the other direction. This is crossing out of the Senate into the House, but is sort of related in terms of, government overreach and policing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's those same trends. So this one's up for a committee hearing on Monday.
Senate Bill 76.
Senate Bill 76. It is mandating that Indiana law enforcement cooperate with ICE. If you feel strongly about this bill, you can contact the chairman, Representative Chris Jeter. He's 317-232-9769. You can contact all the committee members if you want, but especially if one of your representatives is in the committee, your voice is going to hold extra weight. But I always like to tell people, you contact the chairman too, even if it's not your actual representative. And if the assistant on the phone says, oh, you need to just call your rep, tell them like, yeah, I will, but I want the chairman or chairwoman to hear my concerns too about this bill. They shouldn't give you any issue. I think I've called once and they were like, well, just call your representative. And it's like, no. I want the chairman to hear my concerns directly about this bill too. Just to make sure.
We've talked about this a couple times over the last several weeks, Katie, is that how the chair of a committee is a very important veto in many ways. Things that they don't support might not get through their committee. They can just ignore it entirely.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very important. So yeah, Representative Chris Jeter is definitely someone to reach out to. You can also attend the committee hearing. Now you have to observe Statehouse decorum. You're going to sit, you got to be quiet. They don't let you have posters in the room. The alternative is you can stand out in the hallway with signs if you'd like. But you absolutely can be there and just sort of, your presence is protest. You can be a witness to what's going on and stand in solidarity against these attacks on our immigrant communities and on our Constitution. There's a few really concerning aspects about this bill. And I reached out to our friends over at Hoosier Asian American Power, really great group. They are running a lot of the talking points for this. And so they graciously let me kind of share some of these on our tracker. But definitely check out HAP, Hoosier Asian American Power. Their summary was there's a few things this bill does because it's pretty dense. So one, it's going to increase the risk of wrongful detainment, Fourth Amendment violations. It's requiring mandatory compliance with ICE. And so that can definitely lead to unlawful detention and increase the cost of litigation, which comes back on the taxpayers. It's happened in other states. So this bill is going to set up taxpayers to, have to pay to clean up overzealous law enforcement who are mandated to do this now. So then we also have this concern of, we're asking our local law enforcement officials to be everything and do everything. And yet they're not really, they don't have the resources or funding to do that. So it's, you can't say support law enforcement, back the blue, and then dump all of this on them. I mean, where's the separation of different, levels of government? Like, where's the respect for local control? So a lot of concerns out of that one. And then something else that our friends at HAP shared was this overall concern of the surveillance of immigrant communities that SB 76 brings down. It creates this culture of fear. But it's also weaponizing public benefit programs by requiring them to collect data and report on how many non-citizens are using their services. And that is just going to deter eligible people from seeking services or things that they may need. So it's also undermining your local community connections. And I think too with law enforcement, I mean, that's that can really cause some issues with your community relationships when you're mandating that law enforcement now has to work with ICE in this way. So that's one that we're very, very opposed to. And there are many other organizations, ACLU Indiana, Exodus Refugee Group, they're all working together. So this has been, as ugly as this bill is, it's beautiful to see folks coming together just across the advocacy spectrum. And then just regular folks too, standing up against this bill.
I feel like this is directed precisely at inclusive, welcoming communities. Here in Bloomington, for example, I love it here because we are a community like that. Our sheriff, Ruben Marte, has been sued by Attorney General Rokita, as has, I want to say it's the St. Joseph County Sheriff, South Bend, another blue area in the state, as it were. And it's not that our sheriffs are breaking the law. They're not. They're following the law to a T. They're doing exactly what they need to do. And this bill, it sounds like you were saying, is dumping extra responsibilities on them and forcing them to do things that, maybe are above their purview.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just, trashes the trust, that the community's built in them by requiring them to basically be an arm of the federal government. So definitely one as frustrating as it is. Remember, the fight's not over. We still have a whole new committee to get through. So if you can be there on Monday, or if you can send your comments in, send emails, phone numbers, all that information is listed on our bill tracker, or you can follow us on socials as well. We've just put up a post recently about it where we outlined all the committee members. There's about a dozen of them or so. You can email all of them if you want.
So this next one, maybe the consequences aren't as high in terms of life and death as with a law enforcement bill, an immigration bill, but along the same lines of inserting an extra layer of government above what the actual experts in their field know, what they're doing as like our sheriff. We were talking this one before we went live about the librarians and how we need to trust the librarians too. So let's talk about Senate Bill 8.
Right. So Senate Bill 8 deals with like our libraries and their boards. And so right now a library board is generally who sets the budget for that library. They're typically appointed. A few of them around the state are elected, but by and large, library boards are appointed. And so they are the ones that set and create and approve the budget. So SB 8, what that does is it's proposing that in certain circumstances, instead of the library board getting to approve that final budget, it would go over to the local government, the county council or city council, depending on how your library is set up. We looked at this, we kind of went back and forth on it. And then like you said, Scott, we asked the librarians, what do you guys think about this bill? And they said, this is a bill that we don't support. We feel like it's going to cause significant issues. So we said, well, absolutely. Like, we're going to listen to the experts in the field. So here's a reason why they're concerned, because some people say, well, my library is, the city council or whatever signs off on their budget, no problem. And so what that is it's called a binding review. And so that's if your proposed budget is a little bit higher than previous. So right now, if it's 4% or greater, your city council or your county council has to sign off on it. This bill, SB 8, is proposing to bump it down to just 2%. So, is that even that's not going to cover inflation or anything, if you're trying to write your next year's budget. So what this is going to do is going to take a lot of libraries' budgets out of the hands of the library and send it over to that local government. And if your local government's, made up of, good, hardworking, common sense folks, then okay, fine, maybe your library will be okay. But what happens if it's not? What happens if your local government, is politically volatile, or believes, all the nonsense about pornography in libraries or libraries grooming kids, just the ridiculous thrown at the dartboard, culture war nonsense that we've seen over the last few years. If that happens, then there's a real good chance that your library could be underfunded or defunded. And so Senate Bill 8 is going to make a lot more libraries fall under this purview of needing the binding review. Because now if it's a 2% budget raise, now they have to get this stamp of approval.
It's one of these things I talk about in this space a lot, Katie, is these artificial toll booths, these artificial checkpoints that our state government puts in place. They have to insert another place where their like-minded culture warriors get a chance to veto, to put their stamp of approval on things.
Right. Well, and it's like it's sneakier, right? I mean, if you come in and say like, well, we're just going to defund libraries, people freak out. If you come in and start talking about tax levies and boards and just binding reviews and all this jargon, people's eyes kind of glaze over, and they're like, yeah, okay, whatever. So it's kind of sneaky in the systemic type changes that they're pushing through. Because those don't raise red flags as much. But I think it's a really good example of being vigilant about the language, and thinking about, what might this mean for libraries around the state? Because the other idea too is, you could have libraries that continue to thrive. If their city or county council is supportive, you will have libraries that will not, if their local government is not supportive, and takes away their funding. So definitely
I like the way you pointed it out, that the way they accomplish a lot of their culture war goals sometimes is to couch it in this neutral sounding language about taxes and whatnot. This is the old Lee Atwater technique. And I'll give folks a little history lesson. Lee Atwater was an advisor to Nixon and then Reagan, and sort of one of the proponents of the Southern strategy. And he's on record saying, back in the 60s, you could just say N-word, N-word, N-word. Well, as people became more sophisticated, no, you can't say that anymore. You have to say things like states' rights and lowering taxes and eligibility checks and stuff that just makes your eyes gloss over. But the effect is the same.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and we see this at the federal level, state level. I mean, it's nothing new. It's, wrapping up bad policy with a bow on top, or trying to put it in as nondescript a package as possible where you don't raise red flags, but both strategies are used.
So this next bill that we're going to talk about, this one, you can't really couch this language, what they were trying to do. It's pretty explicit, and as such, I think that's why this bill failed. So let's celebrate a bad bill being defeated. Let's talk about House Bill 1119 a little bit.
Yeah, you need like the round of applause sound effect here. This was one that failed.
I have one of those.
Oh, do you? There you go. Perfect. Yay. So there was a bill to authorize the death penalty in Indiana, which we have, to be carried out by firing squad, or nitrogen gas. This bill did fail. That's the cause for celebration. It failed 48-47. You might think like, well, 48 is more than 47. Well, it's not quite enough. It can't just be like a question of one vote. It has to be a constitutional majority, so a little bit more. So it failed by, just the one there. That was, one that raised the concern for us and so many other organizations. Not even with the question of the death penalty and the concerns we have with the death penalty and how it, is disproportionately impacting people of color, but also just the taking us back decades, centuries, to firing squad. But then also the nitrogen gas, very much barbaric way to go. And just, recognized by the, I think the UN, I believe, as, cruel and unusual punishment. So it's one of those, there's justice and then there's retribution. I mean, really, like, what is the point of the justice system? This is just not the way to do it. So this was a good one that we saw.
Coming back to this stuff, it's just the cruelty is entirely the point. I'm looking forward to the drawing and quartering bill in the 2027 session.
God, don't give him ideas, Scott. Yeah. So, we have that one that did fail. Something else, I didn't put it on our list, but I think, we do want to flag is the lawmakers are really looking at changing the way we do bail. Um, right now, there's a constitutional amendment, state constitution, because right now this is part of our constitution. But basically making bail a lot more strict, making fewer people eligible for bail. And so there's a lot of concerns there in terms of just criminal justice and, depriving people of their freedom before they've even had the trial. ACLU Indiana's got some really good content on that one, but quite a few changes coming potentially with bail. There's a few bills associated with it, and then there's also that constitutional amendment. They have to work together. You can find them
I
on our.
understand. Yeah, sorry, Katie. I understand that one actually passed with an overwhelming bipartisan majority.
That one went through. Yeah. That one's gone through. So it's unlike, this death penalty one that did fail. That the bail one is moving through. And that is one I think just to kind of keep an eye out on. I mean, of course, yes, we want safe communities, but we also don't want to preemptively take away people's liberties before they've had due process. And then that bill
that as a constitutional amendment will have to still go to the voters in November.
Correct. Yep. If it passes, it will have to go, and it'll say, shall the Indiana State Constitution be amended to read blah 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 blah. It's called a referendum, so that will go to the voters. It's just a shame they couldn't put other issues on the ballot.
That is a big thing that we could really use in Indiana as citizens ballot initiatives. They have them in a lot of the western states. Even Missouri has it. Ohio has it. Some direct democracy can be really helpful in shaving off some of the worst things these extreme legislatures do. I mean, they have legalized cannabis in Ohio, for example, because of a ballot initiative. Democracy, great idea. Who knew?
Right. So the lawmakers can put questions on the ballot in this way, but citizens can't. Other states collect signatures, it'll appear on the ballot. We don't allow that in Indiana, and that's not for lack of trying. I mean, for several years now, as long as we've tracked bills, there's always been a bill to allow for citizen ballot initiatives and referendums. Every year it is blocked, it's rejected, or it's voted down by the Republican supermajority.
You have to ask yourselves why, right? Why don't they want the people to have a say in their government? So let's look at the next bill here, and this is Senate Bill 277. Now, I understand this one passed out of the Senate.
Yes,
but that is despite the last bill had bipartisan support that we talked about, the joint resolution in the Senate. This passed despite bipartisan opposition.
Yeah, I mean, this one it's a bad bill, but here's the thing: you have to think a little differently in a state with a supermajority. Winning looks a little different. As much as we want to just be able to defeat all the bad bills and advance all the good bills, the reality is a little different. And when you have such a difference, supermajority, and it's something like they're a little different. I think 77% of our House seats are red. But let's say 3/4 between the House and the Senate. About 3/4 of each of those chambers is Republican, and less than a quarter is Democrat. So I mean, it's a massive difference, and this isn't a question of which party should be in charge. It's more about the serious imbalance. And so when you don't have any sort of balance, like I kind of said at the top, that majority party just pushes through whatever it wants because it doesn't have to cooperate. I mean, if you need the majority plus one, to pass a bill, then you don't care what the minority thinks because you don't need them. All the Democrats could walk out. It wouldn't matter. The Republicans can still pass bills because there's at least 2/3 of them there in the seats. So they meet their quorum on their own. So 277 is one. Got a lot of good environmental organizations watching it. It did cross over to the House. There's a little bit of a glimmer there, and the glimmer that I want to illustrate is that there was a lot of bipartisan opposition. So there were 19 who voted against it. There's just 10 Democrats in the Senate, so you had 9 Republicans joining them, which out of 40, that's a quarter of them, almost a quarter of the Republicans voted against it. Obviously, not enough to stop it. It's heading to the House, but the reason we are really concerned about it is it's a huge deregulation bill. Says that the Indiana Department of Environmental Management isn't going to be responsible for all kinds of oversight, all kinds of important functions they currently do. Basically, it changes they shall do this to they may do this. Less oversight, more pollution, more polluters, just bad all around. But again, the glimmer is you had a significant portion of both parties say no and vote against it.
So, this is moving to the House, so chances are it's going to pass because they generally rubber stamp just about any of these deregulatory bills. But I guess if your senator is one of those 9 Republicans who joined the Democrats in voting against this in the Senate, maybe give them a call and say, hey, I appreciate that.
Absolutely. On our bill tracker, if you look at the full spreadsheet version, and it's linked at madvoters.org, go to the bill tracker. On that spreadsheet, we've got a list of all the legislators, the committees, and then we've also got their emails and their desk numbers. So you can go there, look them up, leave them a message, tell them thanks, for voting this way or that way. It does mean a lot, and they do tally those calls and they do track those calls. So yeah, take 2 minutes right now to or whenever we finish this call, take a look at how your senator voted on 277, or how your representative voted on other bills, or your senator on other bills, and give them a call and your feedback. Let them know you're watching.
Absolutely. Yeah, they need to hear from us.
Totally.
Either way.
Absolutely. And again, back to before we sort of finish up with these high alert bad bills, just again, back to that idea of what does winning look like when you're a supermajority state, and it's about educating people, it's about informing people, because the idea is if we can get people educated and informed on what's happening, we can start to slowly shift the balance of power at the Statehouse into something a little more balanced, so we won't have bills like the ones we're going to talk about maybe coming through. So as much as you want to see these bad bills fall flat on their face, I think it's important to realize, every time the news runs a story about it, or every time someone stands up to testify, that's a win, because we're slowly building opposition. It's the long game.
So let us, I guess, take the rest of our time here today and talk about some of these big high alert bills. All of them incredibly dangerous in their own way. This first one, and these have all, I understand, passed out of the Senate. Well, sorry, the first 3 are Senate bills. The last one we'll talk about is the House bill. But so these first 3 have passed out of the Senate and are going to the House. So your representative is going to be the person that you want to call and tell them to defeat these bills. Let's start with Senate Bill 182.
Yep, 182. And we talked about these last week. We're going to keep talking about them because they are so important. This one is the one that takes away the legal recognition for trans, intersex, and non-binary Hoosiers. It says that they won't be able to change their birth certificate. They won't be able to go into bathrooms that match their gender identity. If they have to go to a correctional facility, they have to be housed with members of their biological sex. So even if you've got someone who has, transitioned and it has been living for decades, as a member of, the opposite biological sex that they're born, they are now going to be forced back into, with the members of the other biological sex. It's a real danger for people who are trans. And there's this trope, this really unfair, disgusting trope about, how dangerous trans people are. And it's just, that's not the reality. And we talked about this last week, but just, the studies show over and over, trans women and trans youth are so much more likely to be victims of assault, bullying, harassment, and also to, face mental health struggles, depression, and suicide. because of the hostility of society, far more than they are to be an aggressor. So these are just, it's a bill based in hate and disinformation. So that one is passed. Absolutely give your representative a call. Last I checked, it's not on the schedule yet. But it absolutely could appear at any time. Over the next couple of weeks, we'll see these bills moving through the committees again before they go for their vote in the chamber. And then we wrap up the session at the end of February. So it'll move fast. So take action.
Just not a lot of time to act. So yeah, we really have to get out here and talk to our representatives about this one. Whether you personally have trans folks in your life or not, everybody deserves to live a life with dignity. That comports with their actual identity.
Yes,
and that should be, if you are a small government conservative, that should be it should be obvious to you that an overreaching government should not be able to reach into your pants.
Exactly. Let people live as they are. We don't need to preemptively villainize an entire subset of people just because of who they are, what they look like. I mean, that's just insane. That's not freedom. So that is definitely one to watch out for. And I will say, over the next week or two, as bills are in committee, that is your chance to publicly testify, to prepare a brief statement, come to the Statehouse, give your statement, before the legislators in the committee. Once it passes committee, you're not allowed to come and talk to them again, when it's on the floor. The public comment
Katie,
period.
I understand. But didn't we have a link? I don't know if it was last week or if it was Jessica the week before that you can still there's a link, and it may be on the voters website where you
It's
can
on our
give
website.
testimony in that way, and it'll make its way to the legislators.
You can do that. Yep. There's a link on our tracker page. You can submit testimony, and then we'll send it to the legislators in that committee. Depending on the committee, there may be 10, there may be 15 legislators, but we'll pass your comments on to them. So you can absolutely do that too. Once it gets assigned to a committee, I think especially it's good to know that your comments not only are going to your own state rep or state senator, but they're also going to those committee members, because that's where a bill can get stopped, is in the committee. The committee can say, we're not passing this, or they can also amend it. They can remove some of the bad provisions out so that by the time it gets to the floor, it's a less worse bill.
Very important choke point to
absolutely. So we want to facilitate as much as possible. We want to facilitate reaching out to all these legislators. So our website does have that tool. Thank you. I forgot to mention that.
So now this next one, similar lines, big government overreaching, and right into your bedroom, into your doctor's office, to your body, and that is Senate Bill 236.
Senate Bill 236 is continuing this anti-abortion crusade by members of our General Assembly, banning abortion pills, banning the ability for you to mail them in. If you cross over into Illinois to acquire abortion medication legally, but then you bring it back here in Indiana, all of a sudden that's illegal. You can't have those pills. And so what it also proposes, which is really concerning, is citizen bounty hunters. So it's emboldening members of the public to go out and sue people that they think have violated this ban. So, if you have helped your daughter or your granddaughter or a friend go get abortion pills, and they, brought them back to Indiana, you could be sued for $100,000. And it has a 20-year statute of limitations. So we're going to, it is crazy, but it is right up there with, the TPRs, the terminated pregnancy reports. And the reason why there was such uproar when they were trying to publicize those, and that is still something that Attorney General Todd Rokita is still trying to do, even though the court has said, no, these are protected medical records. You can't release them. He is still on that warpath because they can be used to reverse engineer, who had an abortion, even though they're legal abortions. Those TPRs contain not your name, but your age, your race, your county, it's not that hard for someone to sort of figure out, especially in a small town, who might have had an abortion legally, and then go out and dox them or threaten them. I mean, we've seen some crazy stuff. Look at the redistricting fight. We had dozens of lawmakers threatened and doxed for standing against redistricting. And so there absolutely, I think, is a scenario that we are walking very close to here in Indiana, where we're going to have fellow citizens turning on each other because they have $100,000 incentive to do so. In 20 years, they can look back 20 years and try and get you. This is one that it just boggles the mind that they're even thinking about. And it is one to contact your representative. Will they stop the bill entirely? We've seen what this General Assembly is willing to do with reproductive freedom. They are willing to take it away. But could they amend out some of the concerning aspects? Yeah, I think that is more likely. Let's see if we can focus on getting out this the citizen bounty hunter language and maybe removing that out of the bill. Ideally, we want the whole thing gone. We want doctors to be able to act like doctors and patients to have privacy. But keep that in the back of your mind. Don't think like, oh, well, there's no point. Because there is.
Address that. Like when you call in, Katie, would you say to your representative, hey, I encourage you to defeat this bill.
Oh, yeah.
But if you still insist on voting for it, hey, consider amending this language out of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can absolutely say, I would love to see this bill defeated. But if that can't happen, and here's, ABC, here's what I would like to see out of this bill, ultimately defeat it. But if that's not going to happen, look at these, because obviously we want you to communicate with your lawmakers, your concerns, but we also want to empower you to come to them with, ideas and solutions you might have. They need to hear them. They need to hear from folks in the communities because, people have great ideas about what their community needs, and you should share those with your lawmakers. You should share those ideas that you have, because that's what they're there for. They're there to listen. They're there to, take our ideas and execute them for the good of people. So share those alternatives. Absolutely.
Well, yeah, I mean, those folks, yeah, they are expecting your calls. These are public figures. You mentioned the doxing and the threats, and we don't encourage that. We should not dox or threaten your lawmakers. These are public figures. Yeah. Their information is available. With these pregnancy reports you're talking about, these are private individuals who are expecting the protections of HIPAA, and you've got
and doctors that
threatening them.
Yeah, doctors that are doing legal procedures, getting them threatened. So that's definitely, a huge concern there. So yeah, I mean,
let's talk about another one that looks to basically punish people who are in a vulnerable position, and this is Senate Bill 285, which would essentially criminalize homelessness.
Yes. So it was, you would people would get a misdemeanor if they are camping, is the word they're using, on state or public property. There's like a provision in there where they get like a warning at first, and then 24 hours later, if the law enforcement comes back, they can then arrest them and charge them. And when this was on the floor, there was discussion about, do we have to mandate it? Can we give law enforcement the flexibility? They know their communities best. Like, how about that local control? And that was rebuffed by the bill author. She said, nope. So again, kind of like with SB 76, you have this top-down heavy-handed approach where you're mandating law enforcement do something. Well, I mean, what if, for example, in Indianapolis, there are housing programs in place that are working to get people into housing. If you now have this bill that law enforcement is mandated to remove people from the streets, put them in jail, overcrowd our jails. I mean, that's not a solution. But also, what happens if, 3 days later you have a spot for this individual? Where are they? If they've been living in this, this spot on the street, and that's where you go to find them. And now I've got a spot for you in the shelter, but they're not there because they've been moved. So, they discussed that on the floor, and it was one of those, you're going to hamstring this effort. It's Streets to Homes Indy, I think, is the current project. And that was something that the General Assembly helped bring to fruition. And they're now hamstringing their own program, that they championed here recently. It's very self-defeating. It doesn't make sense. And we also know it's cheaper to house people than it is to jail them. So it's seeking to control and punish people instead of enacting good policy.
Yeah, this one and the last couple that we talked about, they all seem like they are meant to punish people who are already in a vulnerable position.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Instead of, trying to change the circumstances to reduce the chance of them being in a vulnerable position, we're just going to ignore that or compound those problems and then punish them when they're in it. It doesn't make any sense.
And I've made this connection, I think, the last couple of weeks as we've talked about these bills, but the irony that they are taking the least of among us and not helping them but punishing them, and they have the nerve to call themselves Christians and tout themselves as such and display it publicly and mandate that we all go along with this farce, House Bill 1086.
Yep.
10 Commandments bill, the last one we're going to talk about here today.
Yes. So this one has gone through some changes. At first, they wanted to mandate that the schools had to post the 10 Commandments. Predictably, obviously, that's a violation of the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. So then they changed it slightly. It still violates the Constitution. It's really not that
right.
It's not that much better. But now they're saying, no. Now it's just an option. Now you have the option to put it up if you want, if you're a teacher or administrator. You can't read it to the kids, but you can post it. It's like, well, that's still like establishing religion and creating kind of this coercion among students. Your teachers and your administrators are someone that students, they look up to and they respect, and there's a power there that they have. Not appropriate to post religious symbols and phrases and stuff in the classroom. The way that they're trying to get around this is they've renamed the bill, and they're now wanting to call the 10 Commandments protected writing. Protected writings like the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence and other historical documents, because they say that the 10 Commandments is foundational to our government, our system of government, the Western way of life. It's not true. Like that's not actually what the historical record says. But in their rewritten view of history, this makes sense to them.
There's multiple versions of the 10 Commandments. Like which one?
Right, what versions of them. And then what I think was really interesting is in committee, and this is one of those straggler bills, because that snowstorm we talked about at the top of this is one of the straggler bills. It's going to be amended, and we expect like a vote in the House probably Monday of next week or this coming week. But it was widely opposed. You had Jewish faith leaders, other faith organizations come up and say, while we appreciate and hold these ideas dear, we recognize that it's not appropriate to have them in a public school. And I think that was very telling, is you had members of, faith community come up and say, we don't like this bill. And unfortunately, it still passed committee. But there is still, chance to defeat it. And this is one of those that is enough, I think, of a culture war bill, and enough that it's going to put Indiana in the national headlines for the bad reasons. It's potential that this one just gets defeated, or they don't schedule it and it just kind of dies.
But we'll stay on top of it for sure. We've only got a minute left here, Katie. So I guess take the folks home. Remind us all once again where we can track these bills and find all the information we need to get a hold of our representatives.
Absolutely. Yep. Go to MADVoters.org. You'll see our bill tracker there. There are quite a few bills that are up for discussion on Monday. So you can learn about those bills, see who to contact. We've got phone numbers and everything linked. We've got some good bills up on Monday, and we've got some bad bills up on Monday as well. So those are definitely deserving of your attention. And take a few minutes on this snowy weekend to leave a voicemail for your elected officials or send some emails. But your action absolutely collectively is so important. And if each of us take just a moment to reach out to our legislators, that makes a huge difference. Advocate for better policies, advocate against bad ones, or even just advocate for some changes and adjustments, baby step it.
Yeah, 100%. Democracy. It's a messy process, and we have to use all of it that we have available to us while we still can.
Absolutely. Just dive right in. Don't be afraid about saying the wrong thing. Obviously, don't threaten them. But, if you need to write out what you want to say to them before you call, go right ahead. That's fine. We also have scripts and stuff to help you, though, too. So just get out there and do it. It gets easier the more you do it.
Very good. Again, the website is madvoters.org. Check out the bill tracker. Get all the information you need. You submit your testimony, all of the things. Katie Rector, Director of Advocacy, thank you so much for joining us again here this week. And best of luck out there. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you so much, Scott. Take care. And thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Katie.